All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the July 26, 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustments meeting. Our next meeting will be August 30th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. here in the Matthew Thornton Room. If everyone could please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And Lynn, if you could please read in the preamble.
I will do that. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll proceed with the petitions in the order they're listed on the agenda unless the board deems it appropriate to take a petition out of order. Not going to happen tonight. I'm ad-libbing. State law and local ordinances set out the criteria that must be met in order for this board to grant a request. The minimum requirements are outlined on the form provided by the Community Development Office, and the petitioner should proceed with this format to provide adequate justification for the board to grant the request. The chair will then open the meeting to hear testimony either for or against the request. All discussion will be between the speaker and the board. Please be respectful of all, and in the interest of time, refrain from repeating previous testimony. No new documentation will be accepted by the board for consideration this evening, but the board reserves the right to ask for additional testimony at any time. After hearing the facts from all parties regarding a petition, the chairman will close the public hearing. The board will deliberate and vote on the request before moving on to the next petition. Please turn off all cell phones, pagers, any beepers of any sort. And with those people who plan to testify, please stand to be sworn in.
All right, anyone who's looking to speak tonight, please raise your right hand. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you. All right, first petition, Ekbro Company, petitioner owner, variance under section 3.02, note 6 of the zoning ordinance to permit a structure, an ADA compliant access ramp, 19 feet from the front property line, whereas 50 feet is required. Parcels located at 550 Daniel Webster Highway in the C2 General Commercial and Aquifer Conservation, Elderly Housing Overlay Districts, and the Wellhead Protection Area. Tax map 60-1, lot 7, case ZBA 2023-24.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Attorney Greg Michael on behalf of the applicant Ekbro, along with Eli Lino from my office in Manchester as well. We're here to talk about the property located right near the Reed's Ferry property in Merrimack that's been there for many years. I'd like to point out a couple of salient facts, if I could, and then I'll let Eli go through the criteria with you. This building has been here. This predates zoning. The building, the 50-foot line, if we're going to use a 50-foot line, runs through the building. This has been here many years, and you may remember it, some of you, that this was, well, I knew what it was before, but it was Annie Ateli's restaurant for a while, and other tenants have come through the door, and currently the tenant that's there, the comic book individual, uses it. And what's driving us here tonight is the fact that we'd like to fix this a little bit and make it more handicapped accessible for people with disabilities. And in doing so, we're putting some spaces, as you can see, on the north side of the building, and they're running a ramp, a gradual ramp. I mean, to make it work, you need you don't have something that goes like this, 10% grade. A gradual ramp up to the existing wood deck. And if you've ever been there, there's a wood deck. You'll see the stairs actually go beyond, our ramp. But the ramp down in this corner hits the 20-foot area, 20-foot setback. And of course, it's well within the 50-foot setback. But again, it's one of the parts of this that make it a hardship. So the idea here is to continue with some slight improvements to the building, make it more handicapped accessible for folks with handicaps. And I came down here tonight. Eli's perfectly capable of doing this, but I take a strong interest sometimes in handicap situations. There are those of us less fortunate who can't move around as easily, and they need handicap spaces and assistance. And I wanted to discuss this briefly because it's an interesting statutory provision, and I don't know how familiar the board is with it. I'm sure you may be. RSA 67433, Roman numeral 5. And basically what that does is if you're dealing with a variance that focuses on handicap issues, you don't need to prove a hardship. I don't know if you know that or not. You don't need to prove it. The legislature has said from the terms of the zoning ordinance without finding a hardship arising from the condition of a premises, et cetera, et cetera. And it applies to people with recognized disabilities who reside in or use the premises. Well, here people don't reside in it, but disabled people come and use it, and that's part of the statutory criteria. If it were for a separate single individual at a house, I'm just giving you an example, the board could put a condition on it by saying if that person leaves, dies, or disappears, then the variance somehow disappears, which of course is a bit of an oxymoron. If the deck is already in place, it's a little difficult to presume that people are going to rip it down. But we're not in that situation. We are not there. What we're talking about is a nice ramp into the building so the people who are handicapped have a better ability to access the premises. I'd point out that there are other nonconformities associated with this property. The flower bin has been there for years and years and years, and as you can see, that's well within the first 20 feet. Again, part of the hardship criteria, you have to take a look at the entire property. The entire property includes not only what we're talking about, but where the building is. You know, we can't pick it up and move it. That's affixed to the property. So I just want to point out that I believe that we meet hardship anyway. We meet it anyway, based upon where the building is, the age of the building, the location, the existing stairway, and a lot of the properties along this road don't meet the 50-foot setback. So we're in an area, as the Supreme Court has said, take a look at the area. How is that area built? And you know, most of the stuff along that area of Route 3 don't meet this setback. So to suggest that this is somehow inconsistent with the neighborhood just doesn't wash. But I point out to you that consistent with where the building is, where the current wood deck is, where people access, that building this ramp makes sense. We think it's a good thing. And I think it's important that when possible, people do acknowledge handicap situations and do their best to provide reasonable accommodation. So I'm gonna stop with that, and I'll let Eli give you the balance of the criteria. He may have something to say about hardship as well, but I felt it important that I at least point that issue out, because it's an important thing to me. I've been doing this. I did a calculation the other day.
Scary.
You don't want to know, because some of you people aren't even old enough. I've been coming to this board for 45 years. Have you got that number straight? 45. I couldn't believe it when I did my own calculation. But be that as it may, it's always a pleasure to be here, and I hope you'll look favorably upon this. The floor is yours, Eli.
Thank you, Attorney Michael. That's obviously a tough act to follow, but I will do my best here. So I think it behooves us to go through the criteria for the sake of the application. Granting this variance is not contrary to the public interest. For obvious reasons, we are trying to increase the accessibility for the public here. It's providing a public good. This is not something that will really generate revenue for the applicant or the tenant. It's just an opportunity that anyone who wants to enter this comic book store should be able to do so. So the public interest is certainly served by allowing whoever wants to attend and enter to be able to do so. Continue.
Actually, yeah, you can just go. That's so straightforward. You can definitely just go through it all.
Spirit of the ordinance, as Greg discussed a bit, the setback reason is so that you prevent visual cluster, both so that you have tidy and good-looking areas, but also so that cars entering and exiting the site have clear visibility to be able to see. A handicap ramp is a relatively low structure with a railing, but it's not going to have an impact on visibility. It's not really going to have any negative effect on the spirit of the ordinance whatsoever. Again, substantial justice is the balancing test between private rights of the applicant and the public interest and neighborhood rights. This is an opportunity where we're actually spending some money to benefit the public. So the balancing test, it's probably less helpful for us than it is to benefit the public. So the balancing test is very strongly in favor of granting this that criterion. Diminishment of surrounding properties. Again, this is a de minimis request. These types of ramps are not uncommon. They're become a part of life for good reason, that if you can add them to buildings so that people can reasonably use them, it should have no effect on values in the neighborhood. And then, as Greg noted, between ADA regulations and the New Hampshire statute, there's, in certain situations, no need to prove the hardship. Again, I think it's, if we had one applicant, or excuse me, one staffer at the comic book shop who needed this ramp, then it is a reasonable accommodation. This is not the facts we have, so I think it's important still to go through this piece of it. It is a pre-existing building. It's been there since at least 1970 in the current location, and to be able to change this would be unreasonable. You'd have to knock down the building to make it a reasonable entrance, and that's an unreasonable use here when the board can grant the remedy we've asked for. And the proposed use is reasonable. As I noted, these are a common fact of life. We as a society have determined that allowing people with mobility challenges to get into buildings is a good thing, which I don't think any of us would argue. So this is just an opportunity to make sure more people in Merrimack and from other places can get into this use if that's what they choose to do. So happy to answer any questions, but as the chairman said, I think this is a relatively straightforward ask.
Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have any.
I have just one comment, and that's for the petitioner. Not only is the ramp improving the handicap access, but right now, I was down at the site, was chastised for parking in a no parking place, but that's all right. There are 4 parking spaces to the right-hand side of the building. The first 2, and they're butted up against each other. There's no striping. The first 2 are designated as handicap, the other 2 are just regular. If I had a handicap van, there's no way I could park in any of those spaces and get out of the van on the side if there were other cars parked there. So the fact that you are changing those 4 spaces to be 2 handicapped spaces with striping to the street side of them means people can now really use those spaces. So that's another improvement that goes along with this, and I commend you for doing that. That's excellent.
Thank you.
All right, I'll open this up to the public. Is there anyone that's looking to speak in favor or against this petition?
Don't look at him.
All right, I'll go ahead and close the public. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion. I've been to the site many times, and so this is definitely a good improvement. And I'm glad to hear that. Glad to make the motion to approve or to grant the variance. I make the motion that the board finds the petitioner's responses to the statutory criteria are sufficient, provided each criteria is met, and the board adopts the petitioner's responses as the board's findings of fact, and further to grant the variance under section 3.02 note 6 to permit a structure, an ADA compliant access ramp 19 feet from the front of the property line, whereas 50 feet is required, subject to the following condition: obtain appropriate approvals, either administrative approval, waiver of full site plan approval, or site plan approval as determined necessary by the Community Development Center.
Oh, I was going to defer to Brian as his inauguratory.
All right, motion made by Patrick, seconded by Ben. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, 5-0-0.
Thank you. Could I indulge the board for 1 second?
Sure.
Yes.
I don't want the board to take this the wrong way. Picking up some stuff, and a gentleman way back when, back in '86, did a little sketch of the zoning board, the members, okay? And I framed it, I've had it, and I have the names of the members. I did not write them on the thing, but I remember these fellows. I appeared before them many times over the years. But I felt it was important to the extent there's any, how do I put it, historical mementos of the ZBA, I want you to have it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
John Segedie's got to be there.
Thank you so much.
It's pretty cool. Please don't take that the wrong way.
No, that's cool.
I just found it, I wanted to get it to you.
Thank you,
guys,
that's,
okay?
Thank you.
Rick, you look good in the- huh? What are the names?
Rich, what are the names?
Sure.
Yeah, it was, somebody will remember the names, Bruce Nightingale, C.R. Perinsky, who's a character, Arthur Carlson's another character, Don Dwyer, another character, and Antoine Holmes, all characters, I can tell you that.
I know two of them.
Huh?
I know two of them.
Well, but I'm just saying,
Yeah.
it's important that this go with you.
Yeah.
That's all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, now we're leaving, get out of your hair.
Have a good evening. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
Discussion.
So, the only thing I was going to say is welcome, Brian. Brian comes to us from the planning board, 2 years of experience, and he is filling a full member position. So, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Outstanding.
All right. Motion for minutes?
I have one other thing.
Oh, sure. Sorry.
I believe it's a municipal association is running a couple of training sessions for planning board and zoning board. I know I sent the notice to you. I'm not sure if I sent it to any of the others, but I thought it would be helpful for new people coming on the board if they could tap into this, because there's a lot of information comes from municipal association that's very educational.
Is this like the big day long meetings that are?
No,
No, that's different from the one that Tim sends around.
right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, this is a very brief 1 hour, maybe 2 hours, something like that. And I don't know if you may be able to do Zoom. They frequently do Zoom on those, or it may just be a webinar, and they may actually save the webinar so you can go on and watch it at another time. But it's advantageous to new people.
I like that idea.
Ouch. All right. I move we approve the minutes as presented.
Second.
All right. Motion made by Lynn, seconded by Patrick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All oppose? All abstain? All right. So 4-0-1. Brian abstains. And so you guys do the same thing on the planning board.
Yep.
All right. Who wants to make the final motion?
Adjourn.
Second.
There you go. He's inaugurated now.
Yep. Made by Lynn, seconded by Brian. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0-0. Thank you and good night, everyone.